Why did humans become different colors? Look around any crowded space. A market in Lagos, a subway in Tokyo, a bus in Sao Paulo, a schoolyard in London. The first thing you notice before language, before clothing, before any word is spoken, is color. Not just the colors of clothes or hair, but the deep, warm browns, the pale pinks, the golden yellows, the rich umbers, the almost black purples of human skin. It is the most obvious difference between people, and for much of human history it has been the most dangerous. We have built entire hierarchies, justified atrocities, drawn borders, and broken families over the shade of a stranger's epidermis. We have called it race, blood, breed, stock. We have acted as if skin color reveals character, intelligence, worthiness, or even humanity itself. But here's the truth that changes everything. Skin color is nothing more and nothing less than a biological adaptation to sunlight. It is not a mark of Cain, not a curse from Ham, not a sign of divine favor or disfavor. It is sunscreen. It is vitamin D production. It is the human body's elegant, ancient, and utterly practical response to the single most powerful force in our solar system, the sun. To understand why humans come in different colors, we have to travel back in time, strip away every story we have been told, and look at the science of our skin. We have to follow our ancestors out of Africa, across the globe, into ice and jungle, desert and cloud forest. We have to understand what melanin does, what vitamin D does, what folate is, and why losing it can mean losing a pregnancy or a child. We have to see skin color for what it truly is, a map of human migration written in pigment. And once you see that map, you can never unsee it. The differences that have divided us become, instead, the most beautiful evidence of our shared humanity, the canvas. Before we can understand why skin changes color, we have to understand what skin is. It sounds simple, we all have it after all, but the skin is one of the most remarkable organs in the animal kingdom. It is the largest organ of the human body. Laid flat, the average adult's skin would cover about 2 square meters. It weighs roughly 8 to 10 pounds. It is your boundary, your barrier, your first line of defense against a world full of microbes, ultraviolet radiation, heat, cold, toxins, and physical injury. The skin has 3 primary layers, and we need to know about 2 of them to understand color. The outermost layer, the one you see when you look at your hand, is called the epidermis. It is thin, about as thick as a sheet of paper, but it is constantly renewing itself. The cells at the bottom of the epidermis, called keratinocytes, are born soft and alive. Over about 2 weeks, they harden, fill with a protein called keratin, the same stuff that makes up hair and fingernails, flatten, die, and become the tough, waterproof, protective outer shell that keeps your insides inside. The outermost surface of your skin is actually a layer of dead cells. You shed millions of them every day. The dust in your house is mostly dead skin. Beneath the epidermis lies the dermis, a thicker, living layer full of blood vessels, nerve endings, hair follicles, and sweat glands. The dermis gives skin its strength and elasticity. It is where you feel touch, heat, cold, and pain. It is where you bleed when you cut yourself. But for our purposes, the most important part is a thin strip within the lower epidermis called the basal layer. Scattered among the keratinocytes in this layer are specialized cells called melanocytes. These are the cells that make pigment. Every human being has roughly the same number of melanocytes per square inch of skin, regardless of how dark or light they appear. The difference is not in how many pigment cells you have, but in how active they are and what kind of pigment they produce. The pigment is called melanin. The word comes from the Greek melas, meaning black. And indeed, melanin is one of the darkest substances found in nature. It is not just in human skin, it is in bird feathers, octopus ink, the skin of a black panther, the seed coat of a sunflower, the hull of a black rice grain. Wherever life needs to absorb light, to protect against radiation, to hide from a predator or ambush prey, melanin is the answer. There are two main types of melanin in human skin. The first is eumelanin, which is brownish black. The second is pheomelanin, which is reddish yellow. The proportions of these two pigments determine your baseline skin color and also the color of your hair and eyes. People with very dark skin have mostly eumelanin, densely packed. People with very light skin have very little eumelanin and proportionally more pheomelanin, which is why pale skin can have a warm, peachy or yellowish undertone. Red hair, famously, is the result of a variant in the MC1R gene that causes melanocytes to produce mostly pheomelanin instead of eumelanin. But here's the crucial fact. Melanin does not just sit there looking pretty. It is a biological shield. It absorbs ultraviolet radiation from the sun. It scatters it, dissipates it as harmless heat, and prevents it from penetrating deeper into the living layers of the skin. In short, melanin is built-in sunscreen. That is the canvas. Now we need to understand the light that paints upon it. The sun's double edge. Our sun is a nuclear furnace. Every second, it fuses about 600 million tons of hydrogen into helium, releasing an inconceivable amount of energy. That energy travels 93 million miles through space and arrives on Earth as electromagnetic radiation. Most of that radiation is visible light, the rainbow we see, but a significant portion is invisible. Some is infrared, which we feel as heat. Some is ultraviolet. Ultraviolet radiation, or UV, is divided into 3 bands based on wavelength. UVC is the shortest and most energetic, but it is almost completely absorbed by the ozone layer in the upper atmosphere. UVB is longer than UVC but shorter than UVA. It penetrates the outer layers of the skin. UVA is the longest and it penetrates deeper into the dermis. For life on land, UV is a double-edged sword. It is necessary. It is dangerous. And the balance between its dangers and its benefits has shaped not just human skin color, but the entire trajectory of our evolution. Let us start with the danger, because that is what most people think of first. UV radiation is ionizing. That is a technical term that means it has enough energy to knock electrons out of atoms and molecules, creating free radicals that damage DNA. When UV light hits a skin cell, it can cause mutations in the cell's genetic code. Most of the time, the cell repairs the damage, but sometimes it cannot. If enough mutations accumulate, a skin cell can start growing uncontrollably. That is cancer. The most dangerous form of skin cancer is melanoma, which arises from melanocytes themselves. It is aggressive, metastatic, and deadly if not caught early. Basal cell carcinoma and squamous cell carcinoma, which arise from keratinocytes, are more common but less dangerous. All of them are caused overwhelmingly by exposure to UV radiation, particularly UVB. But cancer is not the only danger. UV can also break down a vital molecule called folate. Folate is a B vitamin B9 that is essential for DNA synthesis, cell division, and proper embryonic development. A pregnant woman with low folate levels is at much higher risk of having a baby with neural tube defects like spina bifida, where the spinal cord does not close properly. Folate is also crucial for sperm production in men. The body cannot make it, we must get it from food, and it is exquisitely sensitive to UV light. Shine UV on blood serum containing folate, and the folate concentration drops by 30 to 50% within an hour. Now, here is the evolutionary logic. If you are an early human living in a sun-drenched landscape, say the savannas of East Africa, your skin is exposed to intense UV year-round. If your skin is light and relatively free of melanin, UV will penetrate deep into your tissues. It will break down your folate. Women who lose too much folate may fail to conceive, may miscarry, or may give birth to children with severe birth defects. Men with low folate may have reduced fertility. Over generations, natural selection will relentlessly favor individuals whose skin protects their folate stores. That means dark skin, dense eumelanin, built-in sunscreen. But if the sun only brought danger, every human on Earth would be black as midnight. The fact that we are not tells us that UV also brings a profound benefit. That benefit is vitamin D. Vitamin D is not really a vitamin in the strict sense. True vitamins are nutrients we cannot make ourselves and must obtain from food. Vitamin D is a steroid hormone that we can synthesize in our own skin, provided we get enough UVB. The process is remarkable. When UVB photons hit a molecule of 7-dehydrocholesterol in the epidermis, they convert it into provitamin D3. Body heat then transforms that into vitamin D3, which is eventually converted in the liver and kidneys into its active form, calcitriol. Calcitriol is essential for calcium absorption in the gut. Without enough vitamin D, you cannot absorb calcium from food, no matter how much milk you drink or how many bones you chew. The body responds by pulling calcium out of your bones to maintain normal blood calcium levels, which are necessary for nerve function, muscle contraction, and heart rhythm. Over time, this leads to rickets in children, soft, weak, bowed bones, and osteomalacia in adults, a painful softening of the skeleton. Vitamin D deficiency also impairs immune function, increases inflammation, and has been linked to higher rates of infections, autoimmune diseases, and even some cancers. So here is the evolutionary tightrope. If your skin is too dark in a place with weak sunlight, you cannot make enough vitamin D. Your bones will weaken, your children will develop rickets, your immune system will suffer. If your skin is too light in a place with intense sunlight, you will lose folate, your fertility will plummet, and you will be at high risk of skin cancer. Natural selection fine-tunes skin color to balance these two opposing pressures, protect folate, make vitamin D. The optimal skin color for any given latitude is the one that lets in just enough UVB for vitamin D synthesis while blocking enough UV to protect folate. That is why humans are different colors, not because of race, not because of climate in some vague poetic sense, because of the physics of ultraviolet light and the biochemistry of two essential molecules. But this simple explanation raises 1,000 questions. If skin color is so tightly tied to latitude, why are there pale people in sunny Australia? Why are there dark people in foggy Scotland? Why are Native Americans from the same latitude often lighter than Africans from that same latitude? And if the balance is so precise, how did it change when humans moved? To answer those questions, we have to go on a journey of 200,000 years and every continent on Earth. Out of the African sun, let us begin where we began, Africa. The earliest members of our species, Homo sapiens, evolved in Africa around 300,000 years ago. We know from genetic and fossil evidence that they had dark skin. Not necessarily the darkest skin possible. Some modern Africans, particularly in the Sahel and the Sudan, have skin that is almost blue-black with melanin, but certainly dark enough to provide robust protection against the intense equatorial UV. We have direct evidence of this. The MC1R gene, which controls the balance between eumelanin and pheomelanin, shows very little variation among contemporary Africans. Almost all of them have the same dark skin version of the gene. Among populations that left Africa tens of thousands of years ago, however, the MC1R gene has accumulated many variants, most of which are associated with lighter skin. This is exactly what you would expect if dark skin was the ancestral human condition and lighter skin evolved later independently in multiple populations. But why did dark skin evolve in the first place? Why did our ancestors not keep the furry, pale skin of our great ape relatives? Chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, have light skin under their dark fur. When you shave a chimp, the skin underneath is pale. The same is true of gorillas and orangutans. The common ancestor of all great apes likely had light skin covered with dark hair. That hair provided protection from UV. The skin underneath did not need melanin. Humans are different. We lost most of our body hair. Why? The leading theory is thermoregulation. On the hot, open savannas of Africa, a furry body traps heat. Early hominins, our ancestors from the time of Australopithecus onward, evolved to stand upright, walk long distances, and hunt during the heat of the day. To avoid overheating, they needed to sweat efficiently. Hairless, sweaty skin is a superb cooling system, but without fur, the skin was suddenly exposed to full sunlight. Those early hominins needed a new defense against UV. Natural selection delivered. Dark skin, rich in eumelanin. This transition probably happened well before Homo sapiens emerged. The famous 1.6 million year old fossil of Homo erectus, known as the Nariocotomy boy, found in Kenya, likely had dark skin. By the time our own species appeared, we were already a dark-skinned, hairless, long-distance running, sweating ape. We were perfectly adapted to the equatorial sun, and then we started to leave. The Great Migration. Around 100,000 years ago, small groups of modern humans began to filter out of Africa. They crossed the Bab el-Mandeb Strait at the southern end of the Red Sea, when sea levels were lower and the crossing was narrow. They moved along the coastlines of Arabia and India, reaching Southeast Asia and Australia by about 65,000 years ago. Later waves moved north into the Levant, then into Europe and the steppes of Central Asia. They crossed the Bering Land Bridge into the Americas perhaps 20,000 to 30,000 years ago. Every step away from the equator changed the UV environment. At the equator, the sun is directly overhead at noon, and UVB intensity is extremely high. As you move north or south, the sun sits lower in the sky. Its rays pass through more atmosphere, which scatters and absorbs UVB. A latitude of 40 degrees north, roughly the line through New York, Madrid, Rome, and Beijing, receives about half the UVB of the equator. At 50 degrees north, southern Canada, London, Paris, Berlin, Warsaw, the winter sun is so low that almost no UVB reaches the ground. From November through February, at these latitudes, you could stand naked outside all day and make essentially no vitamin D. This is the Great Filter. Our dark-skinned ancestors, moving into high latitudes, faced a crisis. Their skin, so perfectly adapted to Africa, blocked too much UV. They could not make enough vitamin D. Pregnant women and children were especially vulnerable. Rickets would have been a constant threat. The bones of Neanderthals, the archaic humans who lived in Europe for hundreds of thousands of years before modern humans arrived, show signs of rickets. Those thick, stocky, cold-adapted bodies were not immune to the problem. But our species had a secret weapon. We adapt fast. Not just culturally, but genetically. In populations that moved into low UV environments, natural selection began favoring any genetic variant that lightened the skin. And here's a fascinating twist. It happened independently multiple times, using different genetic paths. The genetics of light. We now know of at least 5 major genetic changes that lighten skin in different populations around the world. This is convergent evolution, the same trait arising separately in different lineages because the same environmental pressure pushes in the same direction. The most famous is the SLC24A5 gene. In 2005, scientists discovered that a single letter change in this gene, a swap from adenine to guanine at a specific position, is responsible for a substantial portion of the difference in skin color between Europeans and West Africans. This variant, known as A111T, arose in a single individual somewhere in the Middle East or the Caucasus between 10,000 and 20,000 years ago. It spread rapidly. Today, it is found in nearly 100% of Europeans, but in less than 10% of East Asians and Africans. A different variant of the same gene lightens skin in some South Asian populations. Then there is SLC24A2, another gene involved in calcium and melanin regulation. There is TYRP1, which affects the type of melanin produced. There is OCA2, famous for its role in eye color, but also influencing skin pigmentation. And there is KITLG, which regulates melanocyte development. East Asians and Native Americans have their own set of light skin variants, different from the European ones. The most important is in the gene MFSD12, which is associated with very light skin in East Asians and very dark skin in Africans. Another variant in the same gene is found in Melanesians, who have the darkest skin outside of Africa despite living in the sunny tropics. Melanesians are a fascinating case. They live on islands north and east of Australia, in the Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, Fiji, Papua New Guinea. They have some of the darkest skin on Earth, but many have blonde hair. Not the same blonde as Europeans, but a distinct, naturally occurring blonde caused by a variant in the TYRP1 gene. This is a perfect example of how pigmentation genes can combine in unexpected ways. Dark skin and light hair together in the same population because the selective pressures on skin and hair are different. But the most extreme lightening happened in Europe. Why? Because Europe is not just high latitude. It is high latitude with lots of cloud cover, low summer UV, and a historically poor dietary source of vitamin D. Before the advent of dairy farming and vitamin D supplements, people in Northern Europe could not rely on food for their vitamin D. Fish, especially fatty fish like herring, mackerel, and cod, are excellent sources, but not everyone had access to them. For farming populations eating grains and vegetables, the only reliable source was the sun. And the sun north of 45 degrees provides almost no UVB for half the year. Natural selection pushed European skin toward extreme lightness. The SLC24A5 variant did most of the work, but it was accompanied by other changes. The result is the very pale skin that burns easily, freckles, and rarely tans. A phenotype that would be disastrous in Africa but is perfectly functional in Scotland. But wait, if light skin is so beneficial in the north, why are Inuit people relatively dark? They live at extreme latitudes, above the Arctic Circle, where the winter sun never rises. Should they not be as pale as Swedes? This is a crucial exception that proves the rule. The Inuit and other Arctic peoples, Smarai, have moderately dark skin despite living at high latitudes, because their traditional diet is extraordinarily rich in vitamin D. They eat seal, walrus, whale, and fatty fish, all loaded with vitamin D. They do not need to make it in their skin. The selection pressure for lightening skin is relaxed. At the same time, they experience intense UV during the summer months, reflected off snow and ice. Snow reflects up to 80% of UV compared to 10 to 20% for grass or soil. An Inuit person on the spring ice is getting UV exposure from above and below. Darker skin provides protection against this reflected UV and against the increased risk of skin cancer, so the Inuit have maintained a moderate skin color, balancing the lack of winter UV with the intensity of spring reflection. The same logic explains why some populations at lower latitudes have lighter skin than expected. The indigenous people of Tierra del Fuego, at the southern tip of South America, had relatively light skin despite living at a latitude comparable to London. Why? Because they lived in a cold, cloudy, rainy environment with very little UV year-round, and their diet included shellfish that provided some vitamin D. The selection pressure for dark skin was weak. Skin color, then, is not a simple gradient from dark at the equator to light at the poles. It is a map of local UV environments modified by diet, clothing, and cultural practices. The recent past. For most of human history, skin color evolved slowly in response to the natural environment. But in the last 10,000 years, two things changed everything: agriculture and migration. The invention of farming brought new dietary patterns, many of which reduced vitamin D intake. Early farmers ate grains, which are low in vitamin D. They drank little milk. Lactose intolerance was the norm for most adults until very recently. As farming spread, populations that had previously gotten enough vitamin D from hunting and gathering suddenly found themselves dependent on sun exposure. This intensified the selection pressure for light skin. It may explain why light skin variants spread so rapidly in Europe and East Asia in the last 10,000 years. Not because the sun changed, but because diets changed. At the same time, humans began moving around the globe at unprecedented speeds. The Roman Empire, the Mongol conquests, the transatlantic slave trade, European colonization, modern air travel, all of these have torn people from their ancestral UV environments and dropped them into new ones. The most dramatic and tragic example is the transatlantic slave trade. Between the 16th and 19th centuries, approximately 12 million Africans were forcibly transported to the Americas. Most came from West and Central Africa, regions with intense UV and very dark skin. They were taken to places like the Caribbean, Brazil, and the southern United States, lower latitudes than Europe, but still far less UV intense than equatorial Africa. In the Caribbean, people of African descent retained dark skin that is well adapted to the local UV. But in the northern United States and Canada, Black people of African descent face a mismatch. Their skin, designed for high UV, blocks too much of the weak northern sun. Vitamin D deficiency is significantly more common among Black Americans than among white Americans, leading to higher rates of rickets in children, osteomalacia in adults, and associated health problems. This is not a matter of race or inherent biology. It is a matter of evolutionary history colliding with forced migration. Similarly, people of European descent who moved to sunny climates, Australia, South Africa, the southwestern United States, face the opposite mismatch. Their pale skin, designed for cloudy northern Europe, lets in too much UV. They have much higher rates of skin cancer, especially melanoma. Australia has the highest skin cancer rate in the world, largely because its population is predominantly of British and Irish ancestry, living under an intense sun. These health disparities are not just statistics. They are daily reminders that our bodies carry the signatures of our ancestors' journeys. A Black person in Chicago and a white person in Sydney are both living in environments their skin was not designed for. Understanding why helps us treat the resulting health problems. And it helps us see that the problems are not inherent to the people, but to the mismatch between evolutionary heritage and modern geography. The sexual selection hypothesis. We have focused so far on natural selection, the survival pressures of UV, folate, and vitamin D. But there is another force that shapes evolution: sexual selection. The choices we make about mates, often guided by what we find beautiful or attractive, can drive traits in particular directions. Some scientists have argued that sexual selection played a role in the distribution of human skin colors. The idea is not new. Charles Darwin himself, in The Descent of Man, suggested that the diverse skin colors of humans might be partly explained by preferences for certain appearances in different cultures. He noted that many societies find lighter skin attractive in women, while others value darker skin. There is evidence for this. In many cultures around the world, women are, on average, lighter skinned than men in the same population. This is not just a product of different sun exposure. It holds even when you account for time spent outdoors. Something about the biology of sex and skin color is at work. One possibility is that lighter skin in women signals youth and fertility because skin darkens with age and with successive pregnancies. Another is that it is simply a product of sexual selection for femininity. But the evidence for sexual selection as a major driver of global skin color variation is weak compared to the evidence for natural selection. The UV vitamin D folate hypothesis explains the broad patterns of skin color distribution with remarkable precision. Sexual selection may have fine-tuned the details, why, for example, the transition from dark to light skin is often associated with a preference for lighter skin in potential mates, but it cannot explain why people near the equator are consistently dark, or why people in high latitudes are consistently light. Those patterns are the work of the sun. However, there is one fascinating caveat. In many societies, skin color preferences have been heavily influenced by social status, not just by mate choice. In agricultural societies, darker skin often meant working outdoors in the fields, while lighter skin meant staying indoors, protected from the sun, a sign of wealth and leisure. This association between light skin and high status has led to widespread use of skin lightening creams, from ancient Greece, where lead-based whitening powders were popular, to modern India, China, and West Africa. The global skin lightening industry is worth billions of dollars. It is a tragic irony. The same sun that shaped our skin colors now drives a multi-billion-dollar trade in chemicals that promise to erase the evidence of our ancestors' adaptations. What race is not? By now, you may have noticed that we have not used the word race very much. That is deliberate. Because if there is one thing the science of skin color teaches us, it is that race, as traditionally understood, does not exist. Let us be very clear. Racism exists. Racial discrimination exists. Racial identity exists as a social and historical reality. But biological race, distinct, discrete groups of humans with clear genetic boundaries, does not exist. Here is why. Human genetic variation is continuous, not categorical. If you sample skin color from a series of populations along the line from Senegal to Norway, you will see a smooth, gradual change. The difference between neighboring groups is tiny. Only when you compare groups far apart do you see large differences. There is no point on that continuum where you can draw a line and say, everyone to the south is one race, everyone to the north is another. This is called clinal variation. Latitude is a cline. Skin color follows the UV cline, so does a host of other traits, from body shape to nose width to the density of sweat glands. But these traits do not change at the same rate or in the same places. The genetic variants that lighten skin in Europe are different from those that lighten skin in East Asia. A person from Northern Europe and a person from Northern China might have similar skin color, but they share almost none of the specific genetic changes that produce that similarity. They are pale for different reasons. Moreover, the genes that control skin color are almost completely independent of the genes that control other traits people associate with race. Hair texture, facial features, blood type, disease risk. You can have very dark skin and straight hair. You can have very light skin and tightly curled hair. You can have ancestry from 3 different continents and a skin color that matches none of them. Consider the people of South India. They have very dark skin comparable to many Africans, but their facial features, hair texture, and genetic ancestry are distinctly South Asian. They did not get their dark skin from recent African admixture. They got it from the same selective pressure that produced dark skin in Africa. Intense UV at low latitudes. Their ancestors who arrived in India from Africa tens of thousands of years ago have maintained dark skin because the sun in southern India is as fierce as the sun in Kenya. Now consider the Ainu people of northern Japan. They have lighter skin than other Japanese, but also more body hair and more European-like facial features. For a long time, this led to speculation that they were a remnant of a lost European migration. Genetic studies show otherwise. The Ainu are closely related to other East Asians. Their unique appearance is the result of isolation and genetic drift, not hidden European ancestry. The point is this: skin color is a terrible proxy for ancestry, for relatedness, for race. 2 people with the same skin color may be genetically very different. 2 people with very different skin colors may be genetically very similar. Far more similar than a random pair from the same race. Human genetic variation is a web, not a tree. We all came from Africa. We all share the vast majority of our genes. The differences we see on the surface are just that, surface differences, produced by a handful of genes responding to the sun. The cultural meaning of color. If skin color is biologically shallow, it is culturally deep. No amount of science can erase the fact that humans have invested skin color with enormous meaning. We have built entire civilizations around the arbitrary distinctions we draw between shades of brown and beige and pink. Understanding the biology of skin color does not make the social reality of race disappear, but it can help us see that social reality for what it is, a construction, not a necessity. Consider how recently the modern concept of race emerged. For most of human history, people identified themselves by tribe, clan, religion, language, or kingdom, not by skin color. The ancient Romans, who ruled a vast empire stretching from Britain to North Africa to the Middle East, did not have a concept of race as we understand it. They enslaved people from all over the empire. Regardless of skin color, a dark-skinned Roman senator was a contradiction in terms, but a dark-skinned Roman citizen was not. The Emperor Septimius Severus, who ruled from 193 to 211 CE, was a native of North Africa, probably of mixed Berber and Roman ancestry. Contemporary descriptions suggest he had dark skin. No one thought this remarkable. The modern idea of race was invented in the 15th and 16th centuries, as Europeans began exploring the globe and encountering people who looked dramatically different from themselves. The Spanish and Portuguese developed the concept of limpieza de sangre, purity of blood, to distinguish Christians from converted Jews and Muslims. This was a religious distinction, but it laid the groundwork for racial thinking. As the transatlantic slave trade expanded, Europeans needed a justification for enslaving Africans. The idea that Africans were a separate, inferior race provided that justification. By the 18th century, pseudoscientists like Carl Linnaeus and Johann Friedrich Blumenbach were classifying humans into races, usually 4 or 5, based on skin color, geography, and supposed temperament. Linnaeus, for example, described Homo sapiens europaeus as light, gentle, and inventive, and Homo sapiens afer as dark, lazy, and cunning. This was not science. It was prejudice, dressed up in scientific language. The legacy of that pseudoscience is still with us. The racist hierarchies of the colonial era became the Jim Crow laws of the American South, the apartheid system of South Africa, the eugenics movements of Europe and North America. They justified segregation, sterilization, genocide. They caused untold suffering. And they persist because skin color is so visible. It is the first thing we see. Our brains are wired to notice differences, to categorize, to sort. That is not racism in itself, it is pattern recognition. But when we attach value to those categories, when we decide that one color is better than another, we cross a line from perception to prejudice. Understanding why skin color exists, really understanding it deep in your bones, can help you cross back. The future of human skin. What will human skin look like in 1,000 years? In 10,000? The forces that shaped our colors are still at work, but they have been dramatically altered by technology and culture. We wear clothes. Most of us, most of the time, cover most of our skin. This dramatically reduces UV exposure, regardless of where we live. It also reduces the selective pressure on skin color. A person in Norway who wears long sleeves and pants year-round and never goes outside without sunblock is not using their skin to make vitamin D. They are getting it from supplements or fortified foods instead. If enough people do this consistently, the survival advantage of light skin disappears. We also have vitamin D supplements, fortified milk, and a global food supply. A dark-skinned person in Boston can maintain healthy vitamin D levels by taking a pill or drinking a glass of milk with added D. A light-skinned person in Lagos can protect their folate and reduce their skin cancer risk by wearing sunblock, a hat, and long sleeves. Technology can uncouple skin color from health. This means that natural selection on skin color has largely stopped in modern industrialized societies. There is no longer consistent reproductive advantage to being light in the north or dark in the south. The genes that control skin color will continue to be passed on, but they will drift randomly rather than being pushed by the sun. At the same time, migration is mixing human populations at an unprecedented rate. A child born in London today might have a Nigerian father, a Polish mother, grandparents from Pakistan and Ireland. That child's skin color will be some complex blend of genes from all over the world, and the child will be just as adapted to London's weak winter sun as any other child who grows up there, which is to say, not at all, because everyone in London gets their vitamin D from food or supplements anyway. The long-term trend is toward homogenization, not necessarily toward a single shade of brown, but toward a blurring of the sharp distinctions that once existed. The more humans move and mix, the more continuous and varied human skin color becomes. We are becoming a palette, not a set of discrete paint pots. But there is also a counter-trend. The cultural meanings of skin color are not fading as fast as the biological pressures. Skin lightening creams are a multi-billion-dollar industry in parts of Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean. People risk permanent skin damage, mercury poisoning, and even kidney failure to lighten their skin. At the same time, movements like black is beautiful and dark is divine push back against colorism, celebrating dark skin as beautiful, powerful, and worthy. The future of human skin will be shaped as much by these cultural forces as by biology. What children should know. Imagine you are explaining skin color to a child, not a simplified just so story, but a real explanation, one that respects their intelligence and answers the questions they are really asking. Here's what you might say. You have skin. Everybody has skin. Your skin keeps your insides in and the outside out. It is the biggest part of you that you can see. And your skin has a special kind of cell called a melanocyte. That is a big word, so let's just call it a pigment cell. Pigment cells make a dark stuff called melanin. The more melanin you have in your skin, the darker your skin looks. Now, why do different people have different amounts of melanin? It has to do with the sun. The sun sends out a kind of invisible light called ultraviolet light. You cannot see it, but it is very powerful. It can hurt your skin. It can cause cancer. It can even break down important vitamins inside your body. Melanin is like sunscreen that your body makes all by itself. It blocks the invisible ultraviolet light and keeps it from hurting you. So people whose ancestors lived in very sunny places, like Africa or India or Australia, tended to have a lot of melanin. They have dark skin. That dark skin protected them from the sun. But the sun is not all bad. Your body needs a little bit of ultraviolet light to make a vitamin called vitamin D. Vitamin D helps your bones grow strong. Without it, your legs would get bendy and weak. So people whose ancestors lived in places with less sun, like Norway or Canada or Russia, tended to have less melanin. Their lighter skin lets in more of the sun's invisible light so they can make vitamin D even on cloudy days. That is why humans have different skin colors. It is just a way of adapting to the sun. Dark skin is great for sunny places. Light skin is great for not so sunny places. And if you move from one place to another, you have to be careful. A person with light skin who moves to a sunny place needs to wear sunscreen. A person with dark skin who moves to a less sunny place needs to eat foods with vitamin D or take a vitamin pill. So skin color is not about being better or worse. It is not about being smarter or stronger or friendlier. It is just about where your ancestors lived. It is like having a coat that is just right for the weather where you live. Some people need a heavy coat. Some people need a light jacket. And some people do not need a coat at all. That does not make any of them better people. It just means they live in different weather. And here is the really cool part. If you go back far enough, thousands and thousands of years ago, everyone had dark skin. That is because all of our ancestors came from Africa, which is very sunny. As people moved away from Africa to places with less sun, their skin got lighter over many, many generations. Your skin color is a map of that journey. It tells the story of where your family came from and how they adapted to the sun. So when you see someone with a different skin color, you are not seeing someone who is different from you. You are seeing someone whose family took a different path out of Africa. You are seeing the story of human adventure written in the skin. The beauty of the gradient. We have traveled a long way, from the melanosite to the stratosphere, from the savannas of Kenya to the ice of the Arctic, from the forced holds of slave ships to the vitamin D supplements on a pharmacy shelf. We have seen that skin color is not a marker of race, but a record of migration. Not a sign of superiority, but a solution to a problem. Not a curse or a blessing, but an adaptation. There is a kind of peace in this knowledge. It is hard to hate someone for the color of their skin when you understand that their ancestors simply lived under a different sun. It is hard to feel superior when you know that your own pale or brown or black skin is just a few genetic switches flipped one way or another, switches that could flip back if the sun demanded it. We are all Africans. Every human being on Earth carries the DNA of that small group of people who lived somewhere in the Rift Valley, maybe near Lake Victoria, maybe in the Kalahari. We are all descended from dark-skinned ancestors. The differences among us are variations on a theme, not separate songs. And yet the differences are real. They are beautiful. There is a reason we paint ourselves in ochre and charcoal and berry juice, a reason we tattoo our skin and pierce it and scar it and tan it. We love color. We are drawn to variety. The human palette, from the deepest blue-black of the Nilotic peoples of South Sudan to the translucent pink of an albino Irish child, to the warm olive of a Lebanese fisherman, to the golden brown of a Filipina farmer, is one of the glories of our species. It is a testament to our ability to live anywhere, adapt to anything, and find beauty in every shade. The next time you look at your own skin, in the mirror or on the back of your hand, think of the sun. Think of the long journey of your ancestors, the places they lived, the UV they soaked up or shielded against. Your skin is a chronicle. It is a living history book. And if you look closely at the person next to you, no matter how different their color, you will see that their skin tells a story too. A different story, but the same story. The story of how we became human. Not different races, not separate species, just one family scattered by the wind and colored by the sun. Frequently asked questions. Why do some people tan and others burn? Tanning is the skin's response to UV exposure. When UV hits your skin, melanocytes produce more melanin and distribute it to surrounding keratinocytes, darkening the skin over several days. This is a protective response. People with light skin have fewer active melanocytes, or produce less melanin, so they cannot tan effectively. Instead, they burn. An inflammatory response to UV damage. People with very dark skin tan imperceptibly because they already have so much melanin. Can skin color change over a lifetime? Yes. Newborns often have lighter skin than they will have as children or adults. Skin darkens with age in many populations, and it can lighten again in old age. Hormones play a role. Pregnancy often causes darkening of the areolas, genitals, and a line down the abdomen, the linea nigra. Some medical conditions, like vitiligo, cause loss of pigment in patches. Why are palms and soles lighter? The skin on your palms and the soles of your feet is thicker and structured differently. It has fewer melanocytes and less melanin. This may be because these areas are not exposed to much UV, or because the thick hairless skin evolved for grip and durability rather than sun protection. Do other animals have color variation like humans? Many animals show geographic variation in color. Birds, reptiles, and mammals all have clinal variation in pigmentation related to UV or background matching. What is unusual about humans is that we lost most of our fur, making our skin color directly visible. We are also unusual in the extent of our migration. No other land animal has colonized every continent with such speed, so no other animal shows such dramatic variation in such a short evolutionary time. Is there any advantage to very light skin besides vitamin D? Light skin absorbs more UVB, which is good for vitamin D production, but it also absorbs more UVA, which damages collagen and leads to premature wrinkling. Light-skinned people show signs of photoaging, wrinkles, sunspots, loss of elasticity decades earlier than dark-skinned people. So there is a trade-off. Vitamin D production versus skin aging and cancer risk. Why do some people have freckles? Freckles are small patches of skin with higher melanin production. They are caused by a variant in the MC1R gene. People with this variant tend to have less melanin overall, but their melanocytes are prone to clumping and overproducing pigment in response to sun exposure. Freckles are harmless and often fade in winter. What about blue eyes and blonde hair? Blue eyes are caused by a single genetic change in the OCA2 gene that reduces melanin production in the iris. Blonde hair is caused by a separate set of changes that reduce melanin in hair follicles without necessarily affecting skin color. You can have dark skin and blonde hair, Melanesians, or light skin and dark hair, most Europeans. The genes for hair, eye, and skin color are related but distinct. Did Neanderthals have different skin colors? Yes. We have sequenced Neanderthal genomes and found that they had variants for light skin and red hair, different from the variants in modern humans. They lived in Europe and Asia for hundreds of thousands of years, so they evolved their own solutions to high-latitude UV. Some modern humans inherited a few skin-related genes from Neanderthals through interbreeding, but most of our skin color variation comes from our own recent evolution. Will everyone eventually be the same color? Probably not. Even with extensive mixing, genetic variation persists. New mutations arise, and people still have children with people who look like them, which preserves local patterns. But the sharp boundaries between races are already blurring. In many parts of the world, most people have mixed ancestry. Skin color will likely become more continuous, with fewer people at the extremes, but it will not disappear. What can I do with this knowledge? Use it. The next time you hear someone make a racist comment, explain the science. The next time you see a skin lightening ad, question it. The next time you look in the mirror, be grateful, not for your color, but for the long, improbable, beautiful journey that put you on this planet, under this sun, in this skin. We began with the question, why did humans become different colors? The answer is the sun. Always the sun that warms us, the sun that burns us, the sun that drives the seasons and powers the photosynthesis that feeds the world. Our skin is the place where the sun meets our genes. Every shade of human skin is a negotiation with that ancient, terrible, life-giving star. There is no scandal in this, no curse, no hierarchy, only adaptation, only survival, only the endless, wonderful, messy process of evolution, doing what it has always done, finding a way to live anywhere, under any sun. We are not different colors because we are different kinds of people. We are different colors because we are the same kind of people living in different kinds of light. And that is a truth worth knowing, worth teaching, worth living by. So go outside. Feel the sun on your skin. Notice the people around you. See the gradient, the continuum, the human family in all its shades. And remember, the color of your skin is not who you are. It is just where you came from and where the sun met your ancestors along the way. Deeper into the dermis, new frontiers in the science of skin color, the epigenetic layer. We have talked about genes, the fixed instructions written in DNA that determine how much melanin your melanocytes produce. But genes are not destiny. They are more like recipes that can be adjusted based on ingredients and cooking conditions. The study of these adjustments is called epigenetics, and it is adding a fascinating new layer to our understanding of skin color. Epigenetic changes do not alter the DNA sequence itself. Instead, they attach chemical marks, methyl groups, acetyl groups, to the DNA or to the histone proteins that DNA wraps around. These marks tell the cell whether to read a particular gene or ignore it. They can be temporary or long-lasting, and crucially, they can be influenced by the environment. Here's what that means for skin color. When you spend time in the sun, UV radiation does more than just stimulate melanocytes to produce more melanin. It also triggers epigenetic changes that make those melanocytes more responsive to future UV exposure. This is why a tan fades slowly and why repeated sun exposure leads to a darker baseline skin color over years. Part of that is genetic selection. People who tan easily have certain gene variants, but part of it is epigenetic memory. Your skin remembers the sun. There is even evidence that some epigenetic changes can be passed from parent to child, though this is controversial and not yet well established in humans. If true, it would mean that your grandmother's sun exposure might have left a faint mark on your own skin's response to UV. This is speculative, but it opens the door to a more dynamic intergenerational view of skin color adaptation. Another epigenetic mechanism involves microRNAs, tiny pieces of RNA that float around inside cells and regulate gene expression. Scientists have identified several microRNAs that are produced in skin cells after UV exposure and that dial down the production of melanin. This is a kind of negative feedback loop. Too much sun triggers a response that partially suppresses tanning, perhaps to prevent overproduction of melanin or to reduce the metabolic cost of making pigment. The takeaway is simple. Your skin color is not just the product of ancient evolution. It is also the product of your own life history. Every sunburn, every vacation, every hour spent in a windowless office. and it may even carry whispers of the lives that came before you. The invisible spectrum. We have focused on UVB because it is the key player in vitamin D synthesis and DNA damage. But UVA also matters, and its role is different and often overlooked. UVA penetrates deeper into the skin than UVB. It reaches the dermis where it damages collagen and elastin fibers, causing the leathery, wrinkled appearance known as photoaging. UVA also generates free radicals, highly reactive molecules that damage DNA indirectly, contributing to skin cancer. And UVA can trigger melanin production, but through a different biochemical pathway than UVB. Here's a surprising fact. UVA passes through glass. The UVB that causes sunburn is mostly blocked by windows, but UVA streams right through. This means that people who spend long hours driving or sitting by a sunny window are getting chronic UVA exposure without the warning sign of a burn. It is one reason truck drivers often show more sun damage on the left side of their face. And it is why dermatologists recommend sunscreen even indoors if you sit near a window. But UVA also has a beneficial effect that is only now being understood. It triggers the release of nitric oxide from the skin into the bloodstream. Nitric oxide is a vasodilator. It relaxes blood vessels and lowers blood pressure. This may explain why blood pressure is lower in sunny climates and higher in winter. It may also explain why moderate sun exposure is associated with a reduced risk of heart disease, stroke, and even all-cause mortality, despite the increased risk of skin cancer. The trade-offs become even more complex. Dark skin, by blocking more UVA, may reduce nitric oxide release. Light skin, by letting in more UVA, may get more cardiovascular benefit, but also more photoaging and cancer risk. Once again, there is no perfect skin color. There are only local optima, balancing a dozen different health outcomes. And then there is visible light. Blue light, in particular, which comes from the sun and from our electronic screens, can also stimulate melanin production, though much less effectively than UV. Some studies suggest that blue light from computers and phones can worsen hyperpigmentation disorders like melasma. The long-term significance of this is unknown, but it is a reminder that our skin is sensitive to a broad swath of the electromagnetic spectrum. The metabolic cost of pigment-making melanin is not free. Every melanin molecule requires energy and raw materials. The amino acid tyrosine, which is also used to make neurotransmitters and thyroid hormones, is the starting point. The enzyme tyrosinase, which requires copper as a cofactor, converts tyrosine into dopaquinone, which then goes down one of two pathways toward eumelanin or pheomelanin. The metabolic cost of maintaining heavily pigmented skin is not trivial. In high UV environments, that cost is worth paying because the protection of folate and the reduction of DNA damage outweigh the energy expenditure. But in low UV environments, the cost may outweigh the benefit. A lightly pigmented person in Scandinavia saves the energy and raw materials that would otherwise go into melanin production and can redirect them toward other uses: immune function, reproduction, brain development. This is a subtle point, but an important one. Natural selection does not just favor traits that are good for you. It favors traits that maximize your reproductive success given the costs and benefits. In a low UV environment, dark skin costs more than it is worth. In a high UV environment, light skin is disastrously cheap. You save a little energy but lose your folate and die of cancer. We can see this metabolic logic at work in the distribution of albinism. Albinism is a genetic condition that completely blocks melanin production. In Africa, people with albinism face devastating challenges, extreme sun sensitivity, high rates of skin cancer, and often social persecution. But in Scandinavia, this person with albinism has a much milder experience. They still have vision problems. Melanin is also important in the retina, but their skin cancer risk is lower because the ambient UV is weaker. The cost of albinism is higher where the sun is stronger. Conversely, consider vitiligo, an autoimmune condition that destroys melanocytes in patches. People with vitiligo lose pigment in irregular spots. In dark-skinned individuals, this is highly visible and often stigmatized. But in light-skinned individuals, it may be barely noticeable. The same condition has different social and biological consequences depending on the baseline skin color of the population. The metabolic perspective also helps explain why women are, on average, slightly lighter skinned than men in most populations. Women have higher nutritional demands due to pregnancy and lactation. They need more iron, more calcium, more folate. Producing melanin requires some of the same resources: tyrosine, copper, energy. It is possible that natural selection favored slightly less melanin in women to conserve resources for reproduction, while men who do not bear the direct costs of pregnancy could afford darker skin. This is speculative, but it fits the data. The deep time of pigmentation. We have focused on Homo sapiens, but the story of skin color is much older than our species. The evolution of pigmentation in the hominin lineage stretches back millions of years, and comparing us to our relatives and ancestors reveals deeper patterns. The last common ancestor of humans and chimpanzees lived about 6 to 7 million years ago. That ancestor almost certainly had light skin covered with dark fur like modern chimps. As our ancestors became more upright, more active in the open savanna, and less hairy, natural selection began to darken their skin. This process was already well underway in Australopithecus, the genus that includes the famous fossil Lucy, who lived about 3.2 million years ago. We do not have direct evidence of Lucy's skin color, but we can infer that she had lost much of her body hair. Her skeleton shows adaptations for upright walking and heat dissipation, and thus she likely had darker skin than a chimp. By the time of Homo erectus, about 1.8 million years ago, we are on firmer ground. Homo erectus was the first hominin to leave Africa, spreading into Asia as far as Java and China. These early travelers had dark skin as evidenced by a genetic study of the MC1R gene in a 1.2 million year old Homo erectus from Spain. Actually, no, we do not have DNA that old, but we can infer from the fact that Homo erectus persisted in tropical Asia for over 1 million years that they must have been well adapted to high UV. Dark skin is the most parsimonious explanation. Neanderthals and Denisovans, our closest archaic relatives, split from the modern human lineage about 600,000 years ago. They evolved in Eurasia, where UV is weaker. Genetic evidence from recovered Neanderthal genomes show that they had variants for light skin and red hair. One Neanderthal from Croatia had a mutation in the MC1R gene that is different from any found in modern humans, but that also produces red hair and pale skin. Another Neanderthal from Italy had a different set of light skin variants. This tells us that Neanderthals independently evolved light skin in response to high latitude living, just as modern humans would later do. When modern humans left Africa and encountered Neanderthals in Europe and Asia, they interbred. The result? is that many non-African humans today carry a small percentage of Neanderthal DNA, typically 1 to 4%. Some of that Neanderthal DNA affects skin and hair. For example, a Neanderthal variant in the BNC2 gene is associated with lighter skin and freckles in modern Europeans. Another Neanderthal variant in the POU2F3 gene affects skin cell development. So our skin color is not purely the result of recent evolution in Homo sapiens. It is a mosaic, incorporating adaptations from our long-lost cousins. The Denisovans, about whom we know much less, also contributed to the pigmentation of modern humans. A Denisovan variant in the EPAS1 gene helps Tibetans adapt to high altitude. But other Denisovan variants may affect skin color in Melanesians and Aboriginal Australians. The more we learn, the more we realize that our skin is a palimpsest, a parchment that has been written and rewritten by multiple human lineages over hundreds of thousands of years. Skin color and disease beyond vitamin D and folate. Folate and vitamin D are the headline actors in the skin color story, but they are not the only ones. UV radiation affects many other biological processes, and melanin modulates those effects. This means skin color is linked to a wide range of health outcomes, some of them surprising: hypertension and cardiovascular disease. As mentioned, UV triggers nitric oxide release, which lowers blood pressure. Darker skin, by blocking more UV, may lead to higher blood pressure in low UV environments. This is one reason why Black Americans have higher rates of hypertension than white Americans, even after controlling for socioeconomic factors. It is not just about diet or stress or healthcare access, though those are hugely important, but also about the mismatch between skin designed for high UV and a low UV environment. Studies have shown that Black Americans in northern latitudes have higher blood pressure than those in southern latitudes, and that vitamin D supplementation alone does not fully correct the difference, suggesting the nitric oxide pathway is involved. Autoimmune diseases. Vitamin D is a powerful regulator of the immune system. Low vitamin D levels are associated with higher risk of multiple sclerosis, type 1 diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, and inflammatory bowel disease. These diseases are more common at high latitudes, and they are more common in people with dark skin living at high latitudes. For example, multiple sclerosis is rare in Africa but common among Black Americans, especially those raised in northern states. The link is not definitive, many factors are at play, but the pattern is consistent. Infectious diseases. Vitamin D also enhances the immune response to pathogens. Low vitamin D increases susceptibility to respiratory infections, including tuberculosis, influenza, and possibly COVID-19. Dark-skinned individuals in high-latitude countries have higher rates of tuberculosis and worse outcomes from respiratory infections, even after accounting for social determinants. Vitamin D supplementation has been shown to reduce the risk of acute respiratory infections, particularly in people who are deficient. Skin cancer. We have mentioned this, but the numbers are stark. In the United States, melanoma incidence is about 30 times higher in white people than in Black people. Basal cell carcinoma is about 70 times higher. These differences are almost entirely due to melanin protection. However, when skin cancer does occur in dark-skinned individuals, it is often diagnosed later and has worse outcomes, partly because of lack of awareness, and partly because skin cancers in dark skin can appear in unusual places: palms, soles, under nails, inside the mouth. Folate-related birth defects. The link between folate and neural tube defects is well established. What is less well known is that the risk of neural tube defects varies by latitude and by skin color. In China, the highest rates of neural tube defects are in the north, where UV is weaker, which seems counterintuitive. But the relationship is complex, because folate is also affected by diet and by other genetic factors. What is clear is that women with very dark skin living in high latitudes should be particularly careful to get adequate folate from diet or supplements and to protect their skin from UV degradation of folate. Melasma and other pigment disorders. Melasma is a condition of patchy darkening of the skin, often triggered by sun exposure and hormones, pregnancy, birth control pills. It is more common and more severe in people with darker skin because their melanocytes are more active and more responsive to hormonal signals. This is not a life-threatening condition, but it causes significant psychological distress. Understanding the biology of melasma has led to treatments that block tyrosinase, the key enzyme in melanin production. The emerging picture is that skin color is a risk factor for many diseases, but the risk is not inherent to the skin color itself. It is the interaction between skin color and environment, especially UV environment, that determines health outcomes. A dark-skinned person in Lagos is not at higher risk of vitamin D deficiency or hypertension. A dark-skinned person in Chicago is. A light-skinned person in Sydney is not at lower risk of skin cancer. A light-skinned person in Sydney is at much higher risk. Disease risk is a product of mismatch, not of skin color per se. This has profound implications for public health. Instead of treating skin color as a risk factor to be adjusted for in statistics, we can treat it as a clue to the underlying environmental mismatch. And we can intervene not by changing people's skin, but by changing their environment or their behavior. Vitamin D supplements for dark-skinned people in northern cities, sunscreen and sun protective clothing for light-skinned people in sunny climates. The psychology of color. We have covered biology, genetics, evolution, and health. Now we turn to the mind. Why do we react to skin color the way we do? What is the psychology behind our perceptions, our preferences, our prejudices? The human brain is a pattern recognition machine. It is constantly sorting sensory input into categories: friend or foe, edible or poisonous, safe or dangerous. This ability evolved because it saved time and energy. You do not need to analyze every stripe on a tiger to know it is dangerous. You just need to recognize the pattern of stripes. The brain takes shortcuts. Those shortcuts are called heuristics, and they are essential for survival. One of the most basic heuristics is the in-group, out-group distinction. Humans are tribal animals. We evolved in small groups where cooperation within the group and competition with other groups were the norm. Recognizing who belongs to your group and who does not is a critical skill. The brain is primed to notice differences, and skin color is one of the most salient differences available. This does not mean racism is inevitable or innate. The brain notices difference. Culture tells us what that difference means. A child growing up in a racially diverse, egalitarian environment will notice skin color but will not attach negative value to it. A child growing up in a segregated, hierarchical environment will learn that skin color signals status, threat, or inferiority. The perception is universal, the prejudice is learned. Psychologists have studied implicit bias, automatic unconscious associations that people hold about social groups. The implicit association test, IAT, has shown that most people, including many who explicitly reject racism, have an implicit preference for light skin over dark skin. This bias is present in children as young as 3 or 4, and it is found across cultures, not just in Western societies. It is weaker in societies with less racial stratification, but it does not disappear entirely. Why? One theory is that the association between light and good, dark and bad, is not originally about race at all. Across human cultures, light is associated with day, safety, knowledge, purity. Dark is associated with night, danger, ignorance, dirt. These are deep, archetypal associations that predate human evolution. They are built into the way our visual system works. When those archetypes get mapped onto skin color, the result is a default cognitive bias toward light skin. But this is not destiny. The brain is plastic. Associations can be unlearned or at least overridden. Exposure to positive counter-stereotypes, conscious reflection, and deliberate practice can reduce implicit bias. Some countries like Brazil have made explicit efforts to celebrate dark skin and African heritage, with measurable effects on self-esteem and social attitudes. Another psychological dimension is colorism, discrimination based on skin shade within the same racial or ethnic group. Colorism is pervasive in South Asia, Latin America, the Caribbean, and Africa itself. Lighter skin is associated with higher status, better marriage prospects, and more professional opportunities. The preference for light skin is so strong that skin lightening products are a multi-billion-dollar global industry, and many of these products contain dangerous ingredients like mercury and high-dose steroids. The origins of colorism are complex. In many societies, lighter skin was associated with elites who could afford to stay indoors, while darker skin was associated with agricultural laborers who worked in the sun. This class-based preference was then racialized during colonialism and reinforced by media that glorifies Western beauty standards. The result is a global hierarchy of skin color that harms people of all shades, but especially those with very dark skin. Understanding the psychology of color is not an excuse for prejudice. It is a starting point for change. If we know that bias is learned, we can teach differently. If we know that exposure reduces bias, we can integrate our schools, neighborhoods, and workplaces. If we know that media representations matter, we can demand diverse casting and celebrate dark-skinned beauty. The science of skin color does not tell us what to value. It tells us how we got here, and it gives us the tools to get somewhere else. The future of color, gene editing, and beyond. We are entering an era in which we will be able to change human skin color deliberately, not through sun exposure or creams, through genetic engineering. CRISPR and other gene editing technologies allow scientists to make precise changes to DNA. In theory, one could edit the SLC24A5 gene in a dark-skinned person to the light-skinned variant, or vice versa. The technology is not yet ready for use in humans for cosmetic purposes, and it is unlikely to be approved for such use anytime soon. But the technical barriers are falling. What would it mean to choose your child's skin color or to change your own? The ethical questions are profound. On one hand, giving people the ability to avoid the health mismatches described earlier, protecting a dark-skinned child in Boston from vitamin D deficiency, or a light-skinned child in Lagos from skin cancer, seems like a medical benefit. On the other hand, offering skin lightening as a cosmetic procedure would almost certainly exacerbate colorism. It would send the message that light skin is an improvement, something worth paying for. There is also the question of unintended consequences. Skin color is not an isolated trait. The genes that control pigmentation also affect other systems: immune function, inflammation, neurological development. Tinkering with them could have unforeseen effects, and even if the edits were safe, they would be heritable if done in embryos, affecting all future generations of that family line. Some scientists have proposed using gene editing to reverse the effects of albinism, restoring melanin production in people who lack it. This is more clearly a medical intervention, since albinism causes severe vision problems and extreme sun sensitivity. But even here, the line between therapy and enhancement is blurry. Perhaps a more immediate future is not gene editing, but personalized medicine based on skin color genetics. A simple genetic test could tell you which variants of MC1R, SLC2, 4A5, and other genes you carry. That information could guide recommendations for vitamin D supplementation, sun protection, and cancer screening. A person with the red hair variant of MC1R is at much higher risk of melanoma, even if they never burn, and should be screened more frequently. A person with dark skin variants living in a northern city should take higher doses of vitamin D. This is not about changing skin color. It is about adapting behavior and medicine to the skin you already have. Another future possibility is the development of better sunscreens that mimic the protective effects of melanin without blocking vitamin D synthesis. Current sunscreens block UVB effectively, which is good for cancer prevention but bad for vitamin D production. A melanin mimetic sunscreen would block UV more broadly but also allow some UVB through, replicating the natural gradient of protection. Such products are in development, though they are years away from market. Finally, we may see a cultural shift in how we value skin color. The global beauty industry is slowly diversifying. More dark-skinned models appear on runways and in magazines. More cosmetics brands offer foundation shades for very dark skin. Social media movements like Melanin Popping and Unfair and Lovely challenge colorism and celebrate dark skin. These changes are real, but they are fragile. The same industries that promote diversity also profit from insecurity. The same platforms that host Black Girl Magic also host skin lightening ads. The future of human skin color will be shaped by a tug-of-war between technology, commerce, culture, and ethics. Which side wins is up to us. A parable of two ancestors. Let us end this second part with a story. It is a true story as far as we can reconstruct it. About 100,000 years ago in what is now Ethiopia, a woman gave birth to a daughter. The mother had dark skin like everyone in her community. The father also had dark skin, but this daughter carried a new mutation, a tiny change in a gene called SLC24A5, one of the genes that controls the transport of calcium in melanocytes. The mutation did nothing in her. She had dark skin, just like her parents. But the mutation was passed down to her children, and to her grandchildren, and to generations beyond. Most of those descendants stayed in Africa, where the mutation offered no advantage and no disadvantage. It drifted along at low frequency, never disappearing, but never spreading. Then about 50,000 years ago, a small group of humans left Africa. They crossed the Red Sea into Arabia. Among them were some individuals who carried that old SLC24A5 mutation. As they moved into the Middle East, then into Anatolia, then into Europe, the UV environment changed, the sun grew weaker, dark skin became a liability. The SLC24A5 mutation, which had been neutral in Africa, now became beneficial. It reduced melanin production slightly, allowing a little more UVB to penetrate the skin. Those who carried it made a little more vitamin D. Their bones were stronger. Their children survived rickets more often. Over thousands of years, the mutation spread. It was not the only light skin variant. Others arose independently in other populations. But this particular mutation, the A111T variant in SLC24A5, became the dominant light skin variant in Europe. Today, nearly every European carries it. Nearly every African does not. Now consider another story. About 40,000 years ago, in what is now northern China, a woman gave birth to a daughter with a different mutation, this time in a gene called MFSD12. This mutation also lightened skin, but through a different mechanism. It reduced the expression of a protein that influences melanosome size and distribution. The mutation spread across East Asia, becoming common in Chinese, Korean, Japanese, and Siberian populations. It also crossed the Bering Land Bridge into the Americas, carried by the first people to reach the New World. Today, nearly every Native American carries it. Nearly every European does not. These two women lived on opposite sides of the world, thousands of years apart. They never met. They shared no recent common ancestor. But they solved the same problem: how to live in a low UV environment using different tools. Their descendants, scattered across the globe, would never know each other's names. But the mutations those women carried would shape the destiny of billions. Now consider a third story. About 500 years ago, a Spanish ship landed on the coast of what is now Mexico. On board was a man from Extremadura, a region in western Spain. He carried the SLC24A5 light skin mutation. On the shore stood a woman from the Aztec people. She carried the MFSD12 light skin mutation. They met. They had children. Those children carried both mutations, one from Europe, one from the Americas. Their skin color was not a simple average. It was a new combination, a unique mosaic. That child, and millions like her across the Americas, represents the future of human skin color. Not a blending into one uniform beige, but an ever-increasing diversity of combinations. The old categories, black, white, brown, yellow, red, break down when one person carries genes from 3 continents. The future is not a single color. It is a kaleidoscope. We are all descendants of those two women, the one who stayed in Africa and kept her dark skin, and the ones who left and lightened. We carry their mutations, their solutions, their histories. And when we look at the person next to us, we are seeing not a different race, but a different combination of the same ancient adaptations, the same sun, the same problems, the same beautiful, messy, ongoing story of human survival, the light. Inside, there is one more thing. Skin color is about the light that falls on us from above. But there is also the light that comes from within. The light of curiosity, of compassion, of understanding. That light has no color. It does not tan or burn. It does not fade with age or darken with sun. It is the same in every human being who has ever lived. The science of skin color teaches us that our differences are real, but they are shallow. They are the product of geography and time, not of worth or virtue. They are adaptations, not essences. They are maps, not territories. To know why humans became different colors is to see the unity beneath the variety. It is to understand that the child in Mumbai and the child in Oslo and the child in Nairobi are all playing out the same evolutionary drama under the same sun on the same small planet. Their skins tell different stories, but the stories rhyme. And that knowledge, that deep, hard-won, beautiful knowledge, is the light inside. It is the part of us that sees past the surface. It is the part that recognizes a fellow traveler, no matter the shade of their coat. It is the part that says, not with sentiment, but with science, that we are one family. So let the sun shine on your skin. Let it warm you. Let it remind you of where you came from. And then turn your face toward the person next to you and see the same story written in their skin, not as a threat, not as a mystery, but as a gift. The myth of purity. There is a ghost that haunts the conversation about skin color. It is the ghost of purity. The idea that there once was a pure race, a pure skin color, a pure bloodline, and that mixing has corrupted it. This ghost appears in white supremacist rhetoric, in caste systems, in colorist preference for fair skin, and even in some romanticized notions of indigenous isolation. The ghost is a lie. There has never been a pure human population. Not ever. Not at the beginning, not in the middle, not now. Human beings have always moved, mixed, mated, and migrated. The very concept of purity is biologically meaningless. Consider the evidence from ancient DNA. When scientists sequenced the genome of a 45,000-year-old modern human from Siberia, they found something astonishing. This individual, one of the earliest known modern humans outside Africa, had Neanderthal ancestors just a few generations back. His great-great-great-grandparent was a Neanderthal. He was not an exception. He was the rule. Every non-African human today carries Neanderthal DNA because our ancestors interbred repeatedly with Neanderthals across Eurasia. But it goes deeper. Before Neanderthals, there were other hominins. The Denisovans, known only from a finger bone and a few teeth, contributed DNA to modern Melanesians, Aboriginal Australians, and some Southeast Asians. In Africa, where most of our evolution happened, there were ghost populations, archaic hominins we have not yet identified from fossils, but whose DNA lives on in West Africans, in Khoisan hunter-gatherers, and pygmies. We are all hybrids, every one of us. Skin-colored genes tell the same story. The SLC24A 5 light skin variant that dominates Europe did not originate in Europe. It originated somewhere in the Middle East or the Caucasus, probably in a population that had already mixed with other groups. It spread not through conquest or replacement, but through gradual gene flow. Farmers carrying the variant moved into Europe and interbred with hunter-gatherers who carried different light skin variants. The result is that modern Europeans have a patchwork of light skin alleles from multiple sources. The same is true in Asia. The MFSD12 variant that lightens East Asian skin arose in that region, but it has been spread and reshuffled by migrations from Siberia to Southeast Asia. And because of recent global mixing, you can now find that variant in London, in Lagos, in Lima. The pursuit of purity is not just morally repugnant, it is biologically illiterate. It is like trying to find a pure cloud in a sky full of vapor. The only pure human is a hypothetical one, frozen in time, who never existed. This has practical implications for how we think about race and identity. If you are a white supremacist who believes in Nordic purity, you should know that the average Scandinavian carries about 2% Neanderthal DNA, a sprinkling of Denisovan DNA, and genetic markers from the Middle Eastern farmers who brought agriculture to Europe. The pure Nordic type is a fantasy. If you are an African who believes in untouched ancestral lineages, you should know that even the most isolated hunter-gatherers in the Kalahari carry DNA from ancient ghost populations that no longer exist. We are all mixed. We always have been. The beauty of this truth is that it liberates us from the burden of purity. You do not have to be one thing. You are not a drop of blood or a percentage on a genetic test. You are a unique combination of millions of years of human journeying. Your skin color is not a border. It is a passport stamp from every place your ancestors ever called home. The color of time. Skin color changes with age. This is a fact so obvious that we often overlook it, but it carries profound meaning. Newborns are often lighter than they will become. The melanocytes are not fully active at birth. A baby born to very dark-skinned parents may have surprisingly light skin that darkens over the first year of life. This is one reason why adoption across color lines can lead to unexpected outcomes. Parents may not realize that their baby's skin will change. During childhood and adolescence, skin typically reaches its maximum pigmentation. Hormones play a role. Puberty triggers changes in melanocyte activity, which is why some teenagers develop freckles or a darker complexion than they had as children. In pregnancy, many women experience darkening of the areolas, the linea nigra, a dark line down the abdomen, and sometimes the face melasma, or the mask of pregnancy. These changes are driven by estrogen and progesterone, which stimulate melanocytes. They usually fade after delivery, but not always. A woman's skin after multiple pregnancies may be permanently darker in certain areas. In old age, skin often lightens again. Melanocyte numbers decline with age. The remaining melanocytes become less active. Hair turns gray for the same reason, loss of melanin production in hair follicles. Age spots, paradoxically, are areas where melanocytes have become overactive in response to accumulated sun damage. So old skin can be both lighter overall and spotted with darker patches. What does this mean for how we perceive skin color? It means that the same person over a lifetime can occupy multiple positions on the color spectrum. The baby, the teenager, the pregnant woman, the elder. Each has a different shade. If skin color were a marker of identity, which shade is the real one? The answer is all of them. Skin color is not fixed. It flows with time like everything else. This temporal dimension undermines the idea that skin color is a stable, essential trait. It is not. It is a dynamic response to hormones, sun exposure, age, and health. To judge someone by their skin color is to judge a snapshot, ignoring the reel of film that came before and will come after. There is a beautiful phrase in the natural world. Ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny. It is an old, oversimplified idea that an organism's development replays its evolutionary history. But in a poetic sense, it applies to skin color. Each of us, in our own lifetime, recapitulates the human journey. We start light like our ancestors in the womb of Africa before melanin evolved. We darken like the adaptation to the sun. We lighten again in age like the migration to northern latitudes. Our skin is a time machine running forward and backward simultaneously. The unbearable lightness of seeing. We have spent hundreds of pages on the science. Now let us sit with the experience. What is it like to have a particular skin color? Not the biology, not the statistics, but the lived, felt, daily reality. Ask a very dark-skinned person in a predominantly light-skinned society. They will tell you about the stares, the casual touching, strangers who reach out to rub their arm as if to test if the color is real, the comments, "You're so exotic. Where are you really from?" The assumptions about their intelligence, their criminality, their athletic ability, the fear they see in the eyes of people crossing the street, the way shopkeepers follow them through stores, the extra scrutiny at airport security, the constant low-grade vigilance that comes with being visibly different. Ask a very light-skinned person in a predominantly dark-skinned society. They will tell you about the same things, inverted. The stares, the touching, the assumptions. In parts of Africa, East Asia, and Latin America, very pale skin can mark you as a tourist, a target, a curiosity. You are assumed to be rich, promiscuous, weak, or all three. You are asked for photos. You are told you look like a ghost. Ask a person of medium brown skin in almost any society. They may tell you about the invisibility, the way they are not dark enough to be assumed black, not light enough to be assumed white, not Asian, not Latino, not anything. The constant question, what are you? The need to prove their identity to both sides, the code switching, the explaining, the apologizing. Ask a person with albinism. They will tell you about a different kind of visibility. In Tanzania, people with albinism are hunted for their body parts, which are used in witchcraft. In the United States, they struggle with vision problems and extreme sun sensitivity, but also with social isolation and bullying. Their skin is not just light. It is a medical condition that carries a lifetime of practical and emotional challenges. Ask a person with vitiligo. They will tell you about watching their own skin betray them, losing color in patches, becoming a map of unpredictable whiteness. Some embrace it. The model Winnie Harlow has turned vitiligo into a trademark. Others hide it, covering their spots with makeup or clothing, dreading the question, what happened to your skin? The experience of skin color is not reducible to melanin concentration. It is shaped by the society you live in and the history of that society. Your gender, your class, your age, your health, and 1,000 other variables. Two people with the exact same skin color can have radically different lives because of where they were born and who their parents were. This is why the science, while necessary, is not sufficient. Understanding the evolutionary logic of pigmentation does not erase the pain of racism. It does not make the stares stop. It does not protect a child with albinism in rural Tanzania. What it does do is provide a foundation. It shows that the prejudices are built on sand. It gives us a common vocabulary. It allows us to say with evidence that skin color is not what you think it is. And that is a starting point for something better. The colors we choose. If skin color is largely inherited, it is also increasingly chosen. Humans have always decorated their skin with ochre, with tattoos, with scarification, with paint. But modern technology has given us new ways to change our color, temporarily or permanently. Sunless tanning products, which contain dihydroxyacetone, DHA, react with amino acids in the dead layer of the skin to produce a brown color. They do not provide sun protection, but they allow pale-skinned people to achieve a tanned look without UV exposure. Millions of people use them every year. The message is clear. A darker shade is desirable, at least in many Western cultures. Conversely, skin lightening creams are even more popular globally. They contain hydroquinone, kojic acid, arbutin, or in dangerous cases, mercury and steroids. They inhibit tyrosinase, the enzyme that makes melanin. They are used by millions of people in Asia, Africa, the Middle East, and Latin America. The message is also clear. A lighter shade is desirable. We are living through a strange moment. The same global culture that tells dark-skinned people to lighten tells light-skinned people to darken. The ideal, it seems, is a moving target, somewhere between caramel and café au lait. Never too dark, never too pale. This is colorism on a global scale, mediated by capitalism and media. But there is also a counter-movement. The Black is Beautiful movement of the 1960s and 1970s revived in the 2010s as black girl magic and melanin popping. Celebrates dark skin as powerful, regal, and desirable. In India, the Dark is Divine movement challenges the dominance of fair skin advertising. In Brazil, the Black consciousness movement promotes pride in African ancestry. These are not just aesthetic preferences. They are political statements pushing back against centuries of colorist conditioning. Tattoos offer another form of chosen color. People ink their skin with images, words, and patterns, often covering large areas. Tattoos are permanent, painful, and expensive. They are a declaration. This skin is mine, and I will mark it as I please. For some people, tattoos are a way of reclaiming skin that has been fetishized, judged, or shamed. For others, they are pure decoration. Either way, they remind us that skin is a canvas, and we are the artists. Cosmetics, of course, are the most temporary and most common form of chosen color. Foundation, concealer, powder, blush. These products allow people to even out, lighten, darken, or warm their skin tone. The global cosmetics industry is worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Most of that money is spent by women, but increasingly by men as well. The message is that your natural skin color is not good enough. You need to improve it. There is nothing inherently wrong with decorating your skin. Humans have done it forever. But it is worth asking why the improvements so often move in one direction, lighter in some cultures, darker in others, and why those directions align with hierarchies of power and wealth. The choice to lighten your skin is rarely a free choice. It is shaped by a world that tells you from birth that lighter is better. The ultimate choice would be to accept your skin as it is. Not because it is the best or the most beautiful, but because it is yours. It carried your ancestors across continents. It protected them from the sun. It kept them alive. And now it carries you. That is enough. The world without color prejudice. Let us imagine for a moment a world without color prejudice, not a world where skin color does not exist. That is impossible and undesirable. But a world where skin color is seen as we see eye color or hair texture. A trivial variation, a point of curiosity, but not of judgment. What would that world look like? Children would be taught from the earliest age the simple science. People have different skin colors because their ancestors lived in different sunniness. They would learn that dark skin is like a built-in umbrella, light skin like a built-in window. They would learn that all humans are African, that we are all cousins, that the differences are recent and superficial. Adults would not be asked, "What are you?" They would not be profiled by police. They would not be followed in stores. They would not be paid less for the same work. They would not be denied housing, loans, or medical care based on the shade of their neck. The correlation between skin color and life expectancy would vanish. Beauty standards would be genuinely diverse. Billboards would show very dark skin, very light skin, and everything in between. Cosmetics would come in every shade, but they would be used for fun, not for covering up. The skin lightening industry would collapse. The tanning industry would collapse. People would go outside in the sun or stay inside based on comfort, not on status. Would this world be boring? No. It would be infinitely richer because people would be free to express themselves without the weight of racial hierarchy. A person with very dark skin could wear bright colors without being told they are too much. A person with very light skin could wear black without being told they are washed out. Fashion, art, and identity would explode with creativity. Is this world possible? Not tomorrow? Not in our lifetimes, probably. The legacies of racism, colonialism, and colorism are too deep, too embedded in institutions and psyches. But it is possible in the long run if we do the work. The first step is understanding. The second step is teaching. The third step is acting, voting, protesting, organizing, loving. The science of skin color does not guarantee that world, but it provides the map. It shows us that the divisions we take for granted are not natural laws, they are inventions. And what is invented can be reinvented. A letter to the future. Dear human of the future, whoever you are, wherever you live, whatever color your skin, I am writing this in the early 21st century. The world I live in is still divided by skin color. People are killed because of it. People are denied jobs, homes, and dignity because of it. Babies are born into hierarchies they did not choose. Old people die with regrets about the color of their grandchildren's partners. But I am also writing in a time of great change. The science of human origins is finally becoming common knowledge. More and more people understand that race is a myth. They understand that skin color is an adaptation to sunlight. They understand that we are all Africans. I do not know what your world looks like. Perhaps you have cured skin cancer and vitamin D deficiency with pills or patches. Perhaps you have edited your children's genes to give them optimal skin for wherever they will live. Perhaps you have moved beyond Earth entirely and your skin is adapting to the light of a different star. Or perhaps you have simply learned to see each other. Whatever the future holds, I want you to know one thing. The differences in your skins are real, but they are small. They are the tiniest fraction of your shared humanity. When you look at another person, try to see past the melanin, see the bones beneath, the same 206 bones, see the muscles, the same 600 muscles, see the heart, the 4 chambers, the same blood types, see the brain, the 86 billion neurons, the same capacity for love and cruelty and wonder. Your skin is the envelope. Do not mistake it for the letter. And if you ever forget, go outside on a sunny day. Close your eyes. Feel the warmth on your face, that same warmth, that same sun shone on your earliest ancestors. It shone on the first dark-skinned human who walked the savannah. It shone on the first light-skinned human who hunted reindeer in the Ice Age. It shines on every human today, regardless of color. That sun does not care about your skin. It gives its light equally. The only difference is how your body receives it. And that difference is not a measure of worth. It is a measure of geography. So go forth, future human. Live in your skin, love your skin, but do not worship it and do not hate it. It is just skin. What matters is what you do with the time you have inside it, with hope, a human from the past. The gradient of grace. We have traveled from the melanocyte to the cosmos, from the first hominins to the CRISPR revolution, from the savannas of Africa to the ice of the Arctic, to the mixing pots of modern cities. We have seen the skin color is not a boundary, but a bridge, a record of where we have been and a clue to where we are going. There is a word that keeps appearing in this story: gradient. Skin color changes gradually with latitude. It changes gradually with age. It changes gradually as populations mix. The world is not black and white. It is an infinite number of shades, each blending into the next. That gradient is a kind of grace. It is a reminder that nature abhors a hard line. The boundaries we draw between races are not in our genes, they are in our minds. And what is in our minds can be changed. The science of skin color will continue to advance. We will discover new genes, new pathways, new interactions. We will learn more about how UV affects every system in the body. We will develop better treatments for pigment disorders and better tools for preventing skin cancer. But the core insight will remain. Humans are different colors because the sun is not the same everywhere. That is it. That is the whole answer. Simple enough for a child to understand. Deep enough to overturn centuries of prejudice. So the next time you look at your own skin, in the mirror or on the back of your hand, think of the sun. Think of the long journey. Think of the mothers and fathers, the migrations and adaptations, the joys and sorrows that brought you to this moment. Your skin is a chronicle. It is a living history book. And if you look closely at the person next to you, no matter how different their color, you will see that their skin tells a story too. Not a story of race, not a story of superiority or inferiority, but a story of survival, of ingenuity, of the endless human capacity to find a way to live anywhere, under any sun. That story is not over. You are writing it now. With every breath, every choice, every glance at a stranger, write it well. Write it with kindness. Write it with the knowledge that the color of your skin is not who you are. It is just where you came from, and where the sun met your ancestors along the way. And that is beautiful.